The summoning. The emergency sirens had been wailing for 3 days straight. Commander Zurak stood at the observation deck of the last remaining Kilari command center, his 4 eyes fixed on the burning horizon. The Maldorian Empire had methodically destroyed every major city on the eastern continent. Their warships hung in the sky like dark stars, patiently waiting to finish what they'd started. 15 billion dead, whispered Science Officer Ilara as she approached. Her silver skin reflected the red emergency lights, giving her an almost demonic appearance. The bunkers in the northern mountains have gone silent. The underwater colonies in the Meribian Sea report Maldorian dreadnoughts entering their waters. We have perhaps 2 days before total extinction. Zirax's mandibles clicked together, a gesture of extreme stress among the Kilari. And the council? Still debating, Ilara said, her voice tinged with disgust. They believe surrender might spare what remains of our civilization. The Maldorians don't accept surrender, Zirax said. They never have. Not from the Centauri, not from the Vespians, and certainly not from us. This isn't conquest, it's extermination. Ilara moved closer, checking that they were truly alone before speaking. Commander, there may be one option we haven't explored, something I found in the ancient archives. She handed him a data crystal. When he inserted it into his personal terminal, ancient text scrolled across the screen. Forbidden knowledge from the pre-unification era. Zirax's upper eyes widened in shock. This is heresy, he whispered. It's hope, Ilara corrected. The only kind we have left. The text spoke of beings called humans, a species so dangerous they had been banished from known space over 10,000 years ago. Not exterminated, not conquered, but sealed away through a massive cooperative effort by the ancient civilizations of the galaxy. The humans had been too unpredictable, too adaptable, too violent. When threatened, they became something else entirely, something that made even the most fearsome warriors of other species tremble. The records say they could be summoned, Ilara continued, in times of greatest need, when all hope was lost. Summoned? Zirax questioned, like some kind of supernatural entity. The ancient texts are unclear. Some passages suggest advanced dimensional manipulation, others read more like religious rituals. But all agree on one thing: humans were sealed beyond the void, and they could be called back. Zirax stared at the diagrams and instructions. And you believe this? I believe we're out of alternatives, Ilara said simply. The chamber they found deep beneath the capital's ruins predated Kilari civilization itself, a perfect circle carved into bedrock older than their recorded history, with strange symbols etched into the walls and floor, symbols that matched those in Ilara's ancient texts. When they brought their desperate plan before the Council of Elders, they were met with horror. You would bring back the very monsters our ancestors helped banish. Elder Korvac had shouted, his voice cracking with fear. The texts are clear. Humans were sealed away because they were too dangerous to exist alongside other sentient life. More dangerous than the Maldorians who are currently eradicating our species, Zirax had countered. In the end, desperation won out over ancient warnings. With the Maldorian fleet advancing hour by hour, a team of scientists and soldiers gathered in the chamber. Ilara had deciphered the ritual, a combination of specific energy frequencies, rare elements, and precisely spoken words in a language none of them recognized. The summoning requires blood, she explained, holding a ceremonial knife. A sacrifice to open the gateway. Take mine, Zirax volunteered, extending his arm. The ritual began as Maldorian bombs fell on the city above. The chamber shook with each impact, dust raining from the ceiling. Ilara's voice rose above the chaos, reciting words that felt wrong in her mouth, while instruments pumped exotic energy patterns into the center of the circle where Zirax's blood had pooled. The air in the chamber grew heavy, difficult to breathe. The symbols on the floor began to glow with an unsettling blue light. Several technicians fled in terror, but Zirax and Ilara remained, watching as reality itself seemed to bend and tear at the center of the room. Then came the silence, absolute and complete. The bombing stopped, or perhaps they simply couldn't hear it anymore. The tear in reality widened, and through it stepped something. It looked almost like them. Bipedal, 2 arms, 1 head, but the similarities ended there. It had no mandibles, no secondary eyes, no reflective skin. Instead, it was covered in some kind of tight black material that moved like a second skin. Its face was terrifyingly alien, a smooth, curved skull with only 2 eyes and a small mouth. But those eyes, they contained something the Kilari had never seen before. The human surveyed the room, seemingly unaffected by the dimensional transition that should have torn apart any physical being. When it spoke, they felt the words inside their minds rather than hearing them with their auditory organs. "You shouldn't have done this." Ilara stepped forward, trembling visibly. We had no choice. Our civilization is being destroyed. We need your help." The human tilted its head, studying her with those impossible eyes. Then, without warning, it smiled, revealing flat, blunt teeth unlike the serrated mandibles of the Kilari. Somehow, this was more terrifying than any aggressive display. "My name is Alex," the human said, "and you've made a terrible mistake." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The communication officer rushed in, panting. "Commander, the Maldorian fleet has changed course. All ships are converging on our position. They've detected some kind of energy surge." "The summoning," Ilara whispered. They sensed it. Alex walked around the chamber, running her fingers along the ancient symbols carved into the walls. "These were created to keep me out, you know. Now you've broken them." "We are facing extinction," Zurax said firmly. "Whatever the risk, we had no alternative." "There are always alternatives," Alex replied. "You just didn't like them." She turned to face him fully. "Tell me, Commander, do you know why we were sealed away? Do your histories tell you what humanity did to earn such fear?" Before Zirax could answer, the facility shook violently. The Maldorian bombardment had intensified, now focused directly above them. "They're coming," the communications officer reported. "Ground forces have breached the outer perimeter. We have minutes, at most." Alex closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something had changed. A subtle shift that made everyone in the room instinctively back away. "I'll help you," she said quietly. "Not because you deserve it, but because I've waited a very long time to remind this galaxy why they sealed us away in the first place." She walked to the center of the chamber and raised her hand. The air seemed to solidify around her, becoming almost liquid in appearance. Then, without warning, she vanished, not with technology or through another tear in reality, but simply gone. Seconds later, the bombardment stopped. The communications officer stared at his equipment in disbelief. "Commander, the Maldorian ships. There." He swallowed hard. 3 dreadnoughts just went dark. No explosion, no distress signal. They simply stopped existing. On the monitors, they watched as confusion spread through the Maldorian fleet. Ships began to move erratically, firing at empty space. Then another vanished, and another. "What is happening?" Zirax whispered. Ilara's voice was barely audible. "We summoned a human. This is what happens next." The largest Maldorian warship, the command vessel that had orchestrated the genocide of billions, suddenly split in half as if cut by an invisible blade. No explosion, no fire, just a clean separation and thousands of bodies spilling into the vacuum of space. A transmission cut through all communication channels, broadcasting in perfect Kilari. "I see you, butchers. I see what you've done. Now run. Run far and fast, and tell everyone what you witnessed here today. Tell them humanity has returned." The remaining Maldorian ships began a chaotic retreat, crashing into each other in their haste to escape. Through it all, they caught glimpses on their monitors. A single humanoid figure moving through space without protection, without ships, without weapons they could understand. Just as the last Maldorian ship disappeared into hyperspace, Alex reappeared in the chamber, exactly where she had vanished. Not a mark on her, not a sign of exertion. She looked around at the stunned faces of the Kilari. "Your immediate problem has been addressed," she said calmly. "Now we need to talk about why you should fear me more than you ever feared them." Zirax and Ilara exchanged glances. They had saved their civilization, but at what cost? The monster of legend, a human, now stood before them, and the ancient warning suddenly felt very, very real. "What happens now?" Zirax asked. Alex's smile returned, that unnervingly alien expression. Now I remind the galaxy what they tried so hard to forget. The reckoning. The ancient chamber had been transformed into a command center. Screens displayed the retreating Naldorian fleet, now in disarray beyond the fifth planet. The human, Alex, sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, seemingly oblivious to the frantic activity around her. But Commander Zirax knew better. She was aware of everything. "Have you summoned your council yet?" Alex asked without opening her eyes. "I won't repeat myself, so I'd prefer to explain everything once." Zirax exchanged glances with Ilara. "They're on their way." Some were hesitant. "They should be," Alex replied. "But their fear is misplaced. They're afraid of what I am, when they should be afraid of what they've done." The 7 members of the Kilari Council of Elders arrived under heavy guard. Their ornate robes seemed absurdly formal amidst the ruins of their civilization. They stared at Alex with a mixture of awe and terror. Elder Korvac stepped forward. "On behalf of the Kilari people, we extend our deepest." "Save it," Alex interrupted, finally opening her eyes. "I didn't come here for gratitude. I came because you broke the seals, and now we have business to conclude." She stood in one fluid motion. Even though she was shorter than the average Kilari, something about her presence made everyone in the room feel small. 10,000 years ago, 17 species united to banish humanity from this galaxy, Alex began. They feared what we were becoming, what we had already become. They couldn't kill us, couldn't contain us, so they created the void barrier and pushed us beyond it. A prison dimension where time flows differently, where we could evolve and grow and seethe without threatening the balance of your precious civilizations. The records say humans were dangerous, Ilara ventured. Unpredictable. Alex laughed, a sound both beautiful and chilling. "We were pioneers, explorers, scientists, but mostly, we were survivors. When threatened, we didn't negotiate, we dominated. When challenged, we didn't retreat, we advanced. When wounded, we didn't recover, we evolved." She turned to face the council. "And do you know who led the coalition against us? Who orchestrated our exile?" A terrible silence fell over the chamber. "The ancient Kilari Empire," she said softly. "Your ancestors. They feared us most of all, because they recognized in us what they had once been. Adaptable, relentless, unstoppable. But where they had grown complacent with power, we were still hungry." Elder Korvac's mandibles trembled. "That's impossible. Our histories, your histories are lies," Alex cut in. "Convenient stories to hide your shame. The Kilari weren't always peaceful scientists and philosophers. Once, you were conquerors who brought 1,000 worlds to heal. Until you met us." The chamber's alarm suddenly blared to life. A technician called out, "The Maldorian fleet has regrouped. They're coming back. Hundreds of ships, including reinforcements from their home systems." On the main screen, they watched as a massive armada emerged from hyperspace. Not just the survivors from before, but an invasion force unlike anything they'd seen. The Maldorians had committed their entire military might to this single assault. "They're afraid," Alex observed, seemingly unconcerned. "They know what I am, what I represent. Our orbital defenses are gone," Zirax said grimly. "Our fleet destroyed. Even with your abilities, there are too many." Alex raised an eyebrow. Too many for what? To save your planet, your species. She shook her head. You still don't understand what humans truly are. She walked to the center of the room, directly beneath the ancient symbols carved into the ceiling. I need to show you something. All of you. Without warning, every screen in the facility changed. Instead of showing the approaching Maldorian fleet, they displayed images that none of the Kilari could comprehend at first. Planets being torn apart, stars collapsing, entire systems rearranged by forces that defied understanding. This is what humans became, Alex said quietly. Not just warriors or scientists or explorers. We transcended physical limitations. We learned to manipulate matter, energy, space, time, reality itself. We became something your ancestors couldn't classify, couldn't control, couldn't allow to exist. The images showed humanoid figures like Alex, but surrounded by technologies or energies or something else entirely that the Kilari had no reference for. In one scene, a single human stood before an armada larger than the approaching Maldorian fleet, and then the armada simply ceased to exist. We called it the Ascension, Alex continued. Your ancestors called it the Abomination. Elder Korvac had sunk to his knees. The forbidden texts, they spoke of the ones who became as gods. We thought it was metaphor. No metaphor, Alex replied. Just truth you weren't ready to accept. The facility shook as the first Maldorian bombardment hit the atmosphere. Their weapons were designed to burn away planetary defenses layer by layer until nothing remained. We don't have time for history lessons, Zirax urged. The Maldorians are irrelevant. Alex finished for him. She turned to address the entire room. I'm going to show you exactly why humanity was feared, why we were banished, and why breaking the seals was the most dangerous thing your species has ever done. She walked toward the exit. Where are you going? Ilara asked. Outside. The air is toxic from the bombardment, a technician warned. And the temperature. Alex didn't bother responding. The door slid open, and she stepped through into the burning world above. Every screen in the command center shifted to external cameras. They watched as Alex walked calmly through a landscape of fire and ash, toxic clouds swirling around her, but never quite touching her. She stopped in an open area and looked up at the Maldorian ships filling the sky. Then she raised her hands. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The bombardment continued, energy weapons scorching the planet's surface. Then, slowly, the weapon's fire began to curve away from where Alex stood, as if reality itself was bending around her. What is she doing? Someone whispered. Ilara, who had studied the ancient texts more thoroughly than anyone, felt her blood run cold. I think she's rewriting local physics. The curved weapon's fire began to spiral upward, forming a massive vortex that reached toward the Maldorian ships. The vortex grew, accelerated, and then slammed into the nearest dreadnought with impossible force. The ship didn't explode. It imploded, crushed by forces that shouldn't exist. And that was just the beginning. The sky darkened as if night had fallen instantly. Stars became visible despite the daylight hour. But they were moving, shifting, forming patterns that hurt the eyes. The Maldorian ships began to drift together, not as if pulled by gravity, but as if space itself was folding between them. This isn't possible, Elder Korvac murmured. No technology can do this. It's not technology, Ilara replied, understanding dawning with terrible clarity. It's something else entirely. On screen, Alex stood unmoved as chaos unfolded above. The Maldorian fleet, over 800 ships strong, was being compressed into a space impossibly small, not destroyed. Condensed, like matter being forced toward a singularity. Then, with a gesture that seemed almost gentle, Alex pushed upward. The compressed mass of ships shot away from the planet, accelerating beyond what any living being could survive, vanishing into the depths of space in seconds. Silence fell over the command center. On screen, Alex turned and walked calmly back toward the entrance. When she returned, no one spoke. No one could. They had witnessed something beyond their comprehension, beyond what any species should be capable of. That, Alex said quietly, is why we were feared, why we were banished. Not because we were violent or unpredictable, but because we had evolved beyond the boundaries your ancestors believed should constrain intelligent life. Zirax found his voice first. What? What did you do to them? I sent them home, Alex replied. All of them. They'll arrive in orbit around their homeworld in about 3 days. What's left of them will serve as a reminder. A reminder of what? Elder Korvac asked. That some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. Alex turned to face the ancient symbols that had once been part of her prison. You broke the seals that kept humanity contained. In doing so, you've started something that cannot be undone. What happens now? Ilara asked, the same question Zirax had posed hours earlier. Alex's expression softened for the first time. Now I help you rebuild. Not because your ancestors imprisoned mine, but because you had the courage to call for help when you needed it most. That's something humans understand all too well. She looked around at the frightened faces surrounding her. But understand this, I am merely the first. Where one human walks, others will follow. The void barrier is weakening. What you witnessed today was just a glimpse of what humanity has become during our exile. Will you conquer us? One of the younger council members asked. Alex smiled, that same unsettling expression that didn't quite translate across species. Conquer? No, that's not our way anymore. We evolved beyond such primitive concepts. She walked to the ancient chamber's central platform and placed her hand on it. The symbols that had glowed during the summoning began to change, rearranging themselves into new patterns. I'm leaving you with knowledge. How to contact us, how to prepare. The galaxy is about to remember what it tried so hard to forget. Commander Zirax stepped forward. And if other species fear your return, if they unite against humanity again, then they'll learn what the Muldorians learned today. Alex said simply. That humanity is no longer just a species. We're something more, something your languages have no words for. She paused, considering. Perhaps gods is close enough. As the ancient symbols completed their transformation, Alex began to fade, not disappearing instantly as before, but gradually becoming translucent. Remember what you saw today, her voice echoed as her form dissipated. And remember that I showed restraint. When she was gone, the chamber felt emptier somehow, as if reality itself had thinned in her absence. The Kilari looked at each other, uncertain whether to celebrate their salvation or mourn what might come next. Ilara approached the transformed symbols, studying them with scientific curiosity despite her fear. These are coordinates, she said finally. Star maps, dimensional equations. And something else. Something I don't understand. Can others summon them now? Zirax asked. Has she opened the door for all? I think, Ilara said slowly, that the door was always open. We were just the first desperate enough to look for it. Outside, the toxic clouds began to dissipate as if swept away by unseen hands. The fires extinguished themselves. Somehow, the planet was healing at an impossible rate. Elder Korvac looked at the screens in wonder and terror. We've saved ourselves from extinction, he whispered. But I fear we've awakened something far beyond our understanding. Not awakened, Ilara corrected, invited back. The ancient chamber, older than their civilization, pulsed once with that same blue light from the summoning. But this time, it wasn't opening a door to let something in. It was acknowledging that the door would never close again.